the Sports and Mental Health Committee, and I'm a former NFL player, playing for 3 teams back in 2011 to 2013. And currently, what I'm doing right now is performance health and wellness, and an impact speaker, and involved at my church in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm a part of the young adults and singles ministry. So I'm just very grateful for this opportunity and the panelists and everybody being here. And let's just make it happen. I'm really big on my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So if that's what you believe in, we're gonna be praising the Most High. So I'm just grateful that God has us covered, and that we're all here together at the right time, at the right moment.
Thank you, DeAndre. That was nice. So I'm just going to go over the schedule of events. People are still coming in, as you guys know. Everything is blocked off right now. Thank you guys for getting here early. I really appreciate it. But we're just going to get started. People are going to trickle in as we go with the schedule of events. So what's going to happen is we're going to introduce Carol. Community Step Up is an organization that we partner with. They are based in Dallas, Texas. Minority Psychology Network is based here in Los Angeles. I started MPN maybe like 2.5 years ago. So the goal was to create a network of minority mental health professionals and advocates to spread mental health awareness to minority communities. We are a national organization. We have members like DeAndre in Tennessee, in New York, DC, Dallas, Chicago. Now we're expanding to Florida. So pretty much everywhere. What we want to do is make sure that we give psychoeducation, mental health resources, and information. We also have an app you can download. It's MPN, that is in your app store, iOS and Android. We also have a mobile mental health unit that is completing renovation right now. We're going to go into minority communities, give limited talk therapy, psychoeducation, and we're going to have our therapists on there as well to give mental health resources. So MPN is working really, really hard to make sure that we, spread mental health awareness and work to break the stigma. So I was really excited when Carol reached out to me and told me that this was an event that we should do with the NFL Alumni Association. And ironically, DeAndre is a part of MPN and he's a part of the Alumni Association. So it was just really exciting to have this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to everything that's going to happen today. These ladies they flew all the way from Dallas, Texas to be on the panel. And then we also have the Minority Psychology Network panel that's going to be on here after lunch. So they're going to start at 2 p.m. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Carol. She is the founder of Community Step Up. And go ahead, Carol.
Hello, I am Carol Harrison Lafayette, and I'm super excited to be here to experience this Super Bowl experience and bringing mental health awareness all the way from Dallas, Texas. So the panel is going to speak for itself. So we're going to go ahead and introduce the panel, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them.
You can use that mic right there. You can use both of them, it doesn't matter. Okay. Just one right there, you can turn it on. Okay.
Good mid-morning. My name is Casey Fox. I am a high-profile crisis strategist, and very excited to be here. Thank you for having us and hosting us, and happy to see everyone and have a discussion that is very much so needed. And I will turn it over to Crystal.
I'm Crystal Mason. I'm the founder of Crystal Mason, the Fight Against Voter Suppression.
Kenzie Cole. I am a civil rights attorney, and I am very grateful that you all are hosting this panel in this forum. This is absolutely much needed discussion in our community. I see a lot of instances of individuals being affected by mental health issues in our communities, and this is definitely a topic to be addressed. So thank you all for having us.
Hi, my name is Haitasha McDaniels. I am a former NFL wife. My husband passed away in 2013, and I am excited that we are talking about mental health, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation about how it affects NFL families.
Hi, I am Dorothy Patterson. I am a gospel radio personality. I go by the reality coach, and what that means is I teach people to live where they are, not where they used to be. So I'm honored to be here because mental health is something that's a serious issue that people either know or don't even know that they suffer from. And that is why we're so glad that she's hosting this event. Thank you all for being here.
Hello, I'm Monica McBride-Dibbs. I'm the founder of First Quarter Foundation, and I'm the CEO of Big Mouth Radio Network.
Okay, you all have heard from our panelists. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into a discussion, okay? We're gonna start back with Casey Fox, and she's gonna just go ahead and speak and talk about trauma. One thing that we know that many of us experience a lot of pain, hurt, and disappointment. And some things can be so traumatic, especially when you hold it all in. So I'm gonna pass the mic over to Casey Fox.
Thank you. It's a little different for me because usually I am representing and coaching individuals in this space and not having to actually tell my own story in this space. And so with the encouragement of Carol, I'm here today not to talk about my clients, but to talk about myself. I did 10 years in the United States Air Force, and I was a communications combat sergeant. I did 2 tours, one to Afghanistan and one to Iraq. I was in a male-dominant space there, so there was a lot to maneuver. Prior to me joining the Air Force, I was a broadcast television journalist in mainstream. And just to give you a little bit of context to the story, I always knew I was going to go in the military, and I knew that I was going to be a journalist. So my plan was to go into the Air Force and be a journalist for the Air Force. Well, my father, whom I love dearly, said no to the military. My mom's side of the family is where most of the military history was, and my dad's side of the family were educators. My grandmother was a collegiate professor in math, and my grandfather was a collegiate professor in English. And so my dad said, no, you're gonna go to college as long as it's on my dime and such and such and such. So I made a big stink about it and said, and then when I'm old enough to fund my own dreams, I'm gonna go into the military. So I'd already been in broadcast for 7 years before I went into the Air Force. So I went in later. I was about 26 when I joined the Air Force. And it was great. I mean, there were challenges, of course, with gender and race. And so those are some of the things you've probably read or heard about. I can attest to some of that does happen there. And so on my second tour to Iraq, I was injured in a rocket attack. I would like to tell this high-speed story that, I was on the battlefield and this, no. It was before what we call formation. That's where you go to get your intel briefs before you go to your post. And I simply had to use the restroom, latrine as we called it. And Tech Sergeant Maldonado, who I'm really good friends with to this day, he was like, everybody called me Foxy because my last name is Fox, and I am kind of foxy, so it works. But I was like, can you hold my gear so that I can go to the restroom? And when I say gear, I was attached to a military police unit. I worked for what was called the JTOC, the Joint Tactical Operations Center. So I was serving the Air Force and the Army there, and I worked directly for the battle captain. And as a female in the military, the gear, and they've gotten better. I've heard that they've gotten better since I've been out. I've been out now for about 10 years, but you have to take all your stuff off just to go to the restroom. So I had to take off my gear, which consisted of a flak vest or a second chance vest with 160 rounds of 5.56 ammunition on my chest. I wore a drop leg holster, a 9mm with 2 magazines, 15 rounds each, in each mag there. So I had to take all of that off to go to the restroom. So I give it to my buddy, Tech Sergeant Maldonado, and you know, I was stateside, I was an instructor. So I taught troops who were preparing to deploy. I worked at the Deployment Readiness Center. And so I take all of this off, and so we're trained to hear, you know, this was during Operation Iraqi Enduring Freedom. And so it was a lot of, you know, VBIEDs, IEDs, you know, vehicle bombs was the threat. It was an urban warfare. So, you know, it was a different type of war. And we were trained to hear what we call the thump and the thud. And so I'm using the restroom. Visualize this, if you will. I'm using the restroom and I hear the thump. And because I'm an instructor and I've studied this stuff for the last 7 years at that point, I knew that it was going to impact somewhere close to where I was. You know, we were trained to know that it would be within so many meters. So I was like, oh shit, that's gonna be at least 10, 15 meters from where I am. And it actually hit the structure I was in. And I just remember being brought out and looking up Tech Sergeant Maldonado, who was rendering combat first aid to me. We were trained to do that. And I just remember asking him if I still had my legs. So I knew there was something going on there, the lower part of my body. And this structure, this Cadillac, as they called them, which was the restroom on wheels like a trailer, it had blown from the bottom inward. And so there was shrapnel everywhere. I remember that. So I remember the Army guys coming to get me and taking me to a medical evacuation center. And I remember my commander, who at the time was a female, coming and saying, you're gonna be okay, and this, that, the other. For the sake of time, I'll fast forward. When I got back home, I was never the same. Things were different, people were different, the world seemed different. It was very, very tough. I went back into television, and even though things were different and things were tough, I was so strong mentally. So I thought it's a different type of mentally strong. I've come to learn now through therapy and treatment that I was compartmentalizing the trauma. So I seemed strong, like, you know what I'm saying? A lioness, like untouchable. So it was like a catch-22 because inside I was extremely traumatized and suffered extreme PTSD, combat-related stress. Simple things seemed like threats to me. Simple people and scenarios seemed like threats to me. Everything was a threat to me. Everything could take, you know, was extreme, very extreme. And I went back into television, stayed there. But as far as leading people, I was spot on with that. So on the, you know, when I came back into television, I escalated very quickly to an executive level. And again, I met with only seeing one of me there based on race and gender, just like in the military. So I was like, oh, this is familiar. But still navigating that, I never really talked about it. It was just like win, go win, go win, go win, complete the mission, complete the mission, complete the mission, go win, go win. And so I wasn't dealing with my mental. It was just always, I was always on go, always on green, always on her. And, you know, I left corporate and started my own firm, and I started to represent ball players, teaching them media strategies and how to deal with crises, like I did in the military and like I did in broadcast. So I bundled up those skills. But I tell you this story to say that even when you may think you're okay, you're probably not. And I was talking to Kim and Crystal about this before we got here. I think mental health should be as routine as going to get your teeth cleaned. Like we go every 6 months, your mental health needs to be checked on consistently like that. There's been times I've gone to the dentist and my dentist has told me, you've got a cavity form. And I'm like, really? I didn't even know that. Where your mental is the same way. There are things that you may compartmentalize from trauma that you've suffered that you're not aware of, and it begins to become a bigger and a bigger and a bigger cavity. And after a while, it starts to hurt. And I started to hurt. And that trigger for me were the excessive police shootings and the R. Kelly case, which both I've consulted on many cases and worked, and I realized there was a trigger for me. So I had been 10 years removed from the night that rocket attack took place until I realized that I needed help. So that cavity was pretty wide open, and I needed an extraction. So I had to sit down and face it and go through it again, even though I had put it away and said, I don't even remember that. It was a lie. It was there. It was just buried. And so I tell you that story because if you are that person, or if you know that person, be that dentist, be that person to say, hey, you need to look at that. You need some treatment. Keep an eye on that. Talk to someone about that. Don't just sit there and let that wound continue to open and open, because something will cause it to manifest, and it may be in a way that's unrelated. And that's what happened to me. And so thank you for listening to my story.
Hello, everyone. Like I introduced, my name is Monica Debs, and my trauma, I just want to get right to the point. My trauma was when I lost my son in 2018 on the second day of school. And my world has been truly upside down. And had it been a weaker person, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't know if anyone in this room has ever lost a child. I went through this thing where it seemed like when I walked out my front door, the world would suck me up like I could not breathe. I mean, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if anyone has ever lost a kid in this room, but that was very traumatic to me. And I'm gonna be very transparent with you guys today. I'm still living with this hold in my heart. And I don't mean to get emotional, but I do. Because I don't talk about it often, because I'm like the really strong person in my family. So I don't want to turn this beautiful panel down with my tears, y'all. So, my son, Cockrell McBride Johnson, he was 13, and he ran track, played basketball, just a regular boy, a regular 13-year-old kid. And I watched him play football. I watched him try out for football. And as I watched my son try out for football, I began to see him raise his hand as if he was trying to get his coach's attention. And I said, oh, maybe he just needs some water, he wants some water. So I started to make him some Gatorade from the truck because I was there watching him practice. And so as I looked up, I see him running toward, toward the car for me to help him with whatever situation he was dealing with at the time, because as a parent, I didn't know myself. But I don't blame anyone for what happened, because I actually was living with the guilt of me not being able to save my son that day. And I never thought in a million years that I would pick up something. I am an instructor. I teach CPR, AED, and first aid training now because of what happened to my son at school. And it took, well, it's taking longer. The mental health thing is very, very important for us to recognize it, because I know probably when I walked in, nobody thought that I would be, living as, the mother, business owner, they don't look at, we just don't walk around with this mental health thing that's saying, oh, I have issues on my, on our foreheads. But, I wanted to come and tell my story and share with you how important it is to get help. I'm guilty of not getting help. Because I felt like no one can help me. I felt like, I really truly feel like no one would understand. I know some people lose mothers, some lose fathers, and I try to explain it to my own family. It's not the same. It's not. It's not the same. And I did try grief counseling at first, thinking, but I wasn't ready for a group session with anybody. I went in there and I came out worse. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if anybody's ever had to go through counseling or had to seek counseling and felt like nobody in here understands what I'm dealing with. And so I started Kyrell's First Quarter Foundation in Texas to actually help my community understand and help another parent, so they don't have to relive what I live with every day. It's a terrible thing, and if you can try to wrap your mind around it all day long, that your son or your daughter is gone, and it doesn't. It's so many, anything. I can cook something, and I would totally have an anxiety attack. And the doctors want to cover it. Let me go right here. The doctors want to cover up mental health and anxiety and depression and stress by medicating us. And I'm gonna tell you, the medication, yeah, it works for a time, but it also has side effects. Memory loss. It's a lot of side effects with medication. But it seems like that's the only thing that would suppress the anxiety at the time. So I took the medication, and it helps for a period of time. So I just wanted to get this story out about, the mental health and, people out trying to save lives, because that's my job now. My job is to preserve life, help other people, sons and daughters live, basically. That's all I know to do now, and be a wife and mother and everything else that is, I can only try to go on with my days. And I just wanted to share that piece with you guys. And I thank you, Carol, for even giving me the platform to even let some other people know about, the mental health and how important it is to get help.
Amen.
Well, I am again Ruthie Patterson, the reality coach. I live out loud. And when she said she doesn't know if anyone has ever lost a child. Well, I have. In 2017, my son walked to his death. He was murdered, and I still suffer from that somewhat because I feel him still. The smells, someone's laughter, it's really hard. And what I did is I started an organization entitled HACK, People Against Crime and Corruption. And what happens is far too often we want to blame everyone else for our own issues. And I am a mother that lives real. I told my son on Thursday, son, God said, if you don't let me help you, you're going to die. I don't know if any mother could ever look her child in the face with tears, pleading and begging him, let me help you, son. Let me help you. But to go back in time, in 2007, God showed me my son's life. I was asleep, and I had a dream. And my son was laying on the curb. His brother and I were in so much pain. And I was like, God, I knew it was death because he was 6'5". I knew it was death. And I woke up and I said, oh God, I'm so glad that I was dreaming. I fell back to sleep. And in this second dream, my son, a knock came on the door, and I was surrounded by the police department at my front door. And they said, we're looking for DeMarcus Patterson. And I said, what did he do? I woke up. 3 days later, I'm out cutting my grass. I look up, I'm surrounded by the Mesquite Police Department. 10 cops, 10 cars down my street. And just as the dream, the only thing is I was on the outside of the house instead of the inside. And I stood there and I looked at Detective Copeland, and he said, is DeMarcus Patterson here? And I said, no. He said, well, can you find him? I said, no. And of course, when you are a woman of God, he will convict you in your life. And so he started to ask me again, I said, no, hold on. Before you ask me again, let me tell you who I am. I'm a woman of God first. And then I'm a mother. I said, if you give me until in the morning to find my son, I will bring him to you. Because he told me he was looking for him for an incident. I said, sir, I know too many police officers and too many detectives. This is not just a little simple incident. Because incidents, you just wait for him to do something else, and then you do that. You don't come 10 cars deep looking for him. But as I said, if you just give me till in the morning, I'll bring him to you. Well, I left weed eater, lawnmower. I think I even left my shoes to get in my car and go find my son. Because I told him, oh yeah, I can find him, no worries. But I'll go find him and I'll bring him to you. And when you have the favor of God on you, they won't bother you. Now, I live in a city where this don't happen too often, where a black woman looking for a black son that has committed a crime that brings 10 police officers to the street, and you can get in your car while they're standing there and go to find your son, and they not follow you. But that's when you know God has a purpose. So I find my son, and we have to talk to him all night long. And I'm the type, if you do the crime, you must want to do the time. Because I've taught them that. You can't escape what you do wrong. So Fast forward, I took my son and turned him over to the police. My baby, the superstar, the one that had been scouted since he was in the 7th grade by college people. He was that gifted as an athlete. So I turned him over, and he got sentenced 10 years in prison. Never had any trouble. Never been in any trouble. He gets home in 2017. And 5.5 short months later, he's gone. Gone. But let me tell you, my son was suffering from something. I can't necessarily say it was a diagnosis of mental health issues, but it could be maybe the fact that he started taking 4 bars or handlebars or whatever the pills were, and it brought on a premature or opened up an issue that I was unaware of. So needless to say, fast forward, he walks to his death, and now I'm left with the mental trauma of having to ride past the spot every day just to get home where my son died laying on the fence. And I said, God, why me? God said, because you can endure. People got to see what faith in the flesh looks like. I am faith in the flesh. And to fast forward, to add more hurt on top of that, this November the 7th was the hardest day for me to stay faithful and committed to God as a minister of music. I had to be at the station to minister to people who were murderers, who take things and do things that are just unthinkable. But at the end of the day,